Welcome to the Better Two podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Chris Berardo, and we talk about his record Wilder all the time. But we don't talk just about that. We talk about music, we talk about life, we talk about bands, being like a family, and so much more. So tune in. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you've had a career where you started off doing really well, and now you're releasing a new record, Wilder all the time, after being away for a while, and you had kind of a health crisis that kept you away from music. I mean, you're still doing some music, but from what I understand, you had this kind of good following, and then the dreaded C word started, and you had to take care of yourself. How hard was
I
that
did.
for you?
Yeah.
How hard was that for you to have to stop what you were doing and go, okay, I have to take care of me now?
Well, to be honest, I didn't. I barely stopped. I mean, there was certainly a hunk of a year there where I couldn't do anything for several months. Um, but I didn't ever stop. I'll tell you what it really did was make me stop in the overall and just really kind of reconsider things because I'd never had to stop at all, and I'd never had any kind of health issues or any kind of issues, And I always say at that point I've been running fast and hard, like a teenager. And I just, and the job that I have is, will let you do that. So, let you get away with a lot. And this was a sudden reminder of reality and some adult themes. So it made me certainly stop emotionally and regroup and rethink a lot of things. But as for the actual time of it, it was really I had to take care of physical things for maybe a half a year, and then I got back at it. But things still changed. It took me a while to ramp back up. I'm pretty good at getting at it, but it took a while, and we did lose some momentum, absolutely, because of the timing of it, and which we can talk about. But I'd started an album and stopped it, and started and stopped with a couple different producers, and so a hunk of the time that it cost was really that we were just ramping up again, and when that hit, and it just was a total restart, kind of at that point. And I didn't really feel the need to push the river, at that point. I just thought, let me just take a breath here and see what happens next and what comes to me next and what presents itself. So it did take a bunch of time like that, and because of that, it's a career reset because somebody like me is momentum's precious and it goes way fast. So, at a medium or lower level. So so it was a lot of things. It was definitely a career setback, but nothing that I, look back and want to cry about too much because it's, things happen. But it was definitely the first sort of adult life dosage for me. So that was a lot of it. That was a lot of what changed and took time.
It's the mortality check because, yeah, I went through a major move last year and I had some issues come up, and my friends were like, you need to go to the doctor. I'm like, no, I will do that after I move, kind of like you. It's like, I got to keep going. And finally in November, I was like, all right, I moved. I'll go get this checked out. And yeah, it turned out I had cancer. And, the first initial thing is I don't want to die. I want to get through. I want to make through. I want to make sure this is all okay. And then when you get to the other side of it, it's kind of like, okay, now I know I have it kind of, I guess, as you were saying, the reset, it kind of gives you that whole mindset of, I have to make the most of the time I have, whatever time that is. And I have to keep going
Mhm.
and keep being motivated. Is that how it
Yeah,
went?
so much, absolutely. And, they some things are cliches, and then you realize when you're in the middle of them, well, that's the reason why there are cliches. Is many of them are very true,
Hmm.
And of course, I thought about you know, time being precious, not because I was at the edge of, death's door in any way, um, but because it just made me feel, not bulletproof, and there's a certain, not confidence, but you probably know, like just once something knocks you off your seat like that for a second, then at least in the beginning you feel a little vulnerable. I have a problem with that word, but you definitely feel a little fragile and like So it's, for me, I didn't feel like it took a while to build back the full spirit and heart of it, because it's the first time I realized something could go away. And that is, yeah, how can that not be a life changer? And make you think differently about everything, and starting with the simplest things, friends and family, and then the music that's so important to me. It's not just a job. It's if somebody were to take that away, it made me realize I've been so lucky, because I don't know what I do. And right around that same time, a lot of uh, adult new themes were being introduced to me, because we'd had a drummer for 14 years, and he was our friend and brother more than our drummer. And things were just kind of really ramping up then with the band, and he passed away suddenly on us. Um, and so we were just getting our footing back from that, and feeling pretty good. And finally, and it took a couple of years to finally be sort of feeling back where we were. And then my thing started. So, uh, or the chronology maybe, but it was we lost this guy Paulie we love so much. So there's you're more susceptible to these, to getting knocked off your beam a little bit, when something like that happens. Until I think till you get all your confidence back, and I did, and I feel great now. And I'm not glad for the experience, but I don't I don't regret it in a way. I mean, it was a time to reset the engines. That can always be good.
Well, and as an artist, how much, the drummer's death, the cancer, how many of those personal things bleed into your music, and that shapes your music and that changes your music. Because as you said, it's like you have and I don't want to say it, but I'll say it this way, the cliche of the badass rock star who's invincible, who's going to keep going and going and going, to looking at real life events that affect you, and that's gonna bleed. I mean, I write, so
Yeah.
personal stuff bleeds into your work as a creative. So how much did those events
Oh yeah.
change your music?
Oh, so I mean, completely. I mean, I'd have to ask someone else how much it changed it. Who had a better perspective. But it definitely, as far as bleeding in, it bled in fast. It opened a faucet. There's a song on the album, this new album coming up, called "Take Me Back," and it's a direct. I mean, I remember where I was sitting when the idea came over me. Just one of those days that I'm sure you understand, when you're fighting it and you're doing good and you're staying on top of it and keeping the best attitude. And just once in a while, I'd have a rough day where it would be like, you know what, I'd rather not do any of this. I'd rather, I'm not into it. And I just want this to go away, like a child. And I started thinking back to being a kid and everything super easy, and a lot of my life, I had a long childhood. When you get in this business like what I do, it'll allow you that. And I just I had this sense of, I would just like things to magically be great again, like when I was a kid, and everything was possibility and everything was exciting and new and full of nothing but hope and road forward. uh, and that song's on there, and it's when I was feeling bad and in a kind of rough spot. But so the song is that, and it's also facing up to the fears of the bridge and the chorus play against each other, where the guy is saying like, this, I got something serious happening here. This is a real thing, and there are these are going to be the life scars. So definitely that song, kind of specific, kind of literally. And then I think, like you said, a lot of it that came at that period of time had a lot of that in it. Just don't waste time. There's another song that talks about just being in the moment, and just every moment's precious. Like I said, cliches, but they seem all too real, right? When you're
Hmm.
going through, nothing's a cliche, because it's like people talk about falling in love, and all the songs on the radio make sense. Well, it's like a lot of the cliches make sense like that. Like, don't waste time, and petty things, forget it. Don't sweat so much. And I still keep that with me, and I still have days where I backpedal and I sweat stupid stuff, and I get mad at myself for breaking my promise to the guy, to me back then, who said never again am I going to worry about stupid stuff. But in the overall, that's what I mean. The good can come out of it because I think a lot of that I've kept with me, respecting the moment and not letting dumb stuff take away the joy of what you're actually doing.
Well, you brought up something that's interesting because when you think about it, and I had this conversation not too long ago with one of my friends, when we're younger, it's like we think we have the world by the balls. We can do this. Nobody's going to stop us. Everything's going to be great. And then when you hit a certain age, it's like, wait a second, where did that person go?
Yeah, and like I kept, you know, I was that guy, and I think I still am. But it takes one thing, like I said, to that vulnerability. It's like an athlete, like a high level athlete who gets an injury, and suddenly they don't cut as fast, or that there's a little. It's not fear, but a little reality can shake you.
Yes.
Like definitely that, like, what, how did that, like, I felt like that's a thing for old people when well, it's not at all. I'm that age. That's a thing that
Mhm.
happens to people in lots of situations. I just felt like it wasn't even the age thing, to be honest. I felt like, oh, that's a thing for like adults, grown-ups. Yeah.
Yeah.
that I've seen it in movies, like that's not for me. um, so again, it's not bad to have a little reset in life and remind yourself that, oh no, none of us are special in those ways. um, it always
So
happens.
that's the thing. It's like I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm like, wow. So, yeah, I mean, I've come to the realization for some reason I'm closer to 60 now than I used to be, and it's getting there, and it's like, how did that happen? Because I don't remember being that old.
Yeah, yeah. I you know, don't you always think of like I think we imprint on something at some prime age. I don't know, like 24 or 28, could be anything for anybody, but that's, you lock in there and you're like, that's me. And you see all the old people around you and they're that.
Hmm.
And they were never young and you'll never be old.
Hmm.
And I know now that that older woman down the end of the bar was probably the belle of the ball, not very long ago, just, in her mini skirt and high heels. So like we're many things
This is
and it
true.
keeps changing.
This is
But spirit of the young guy still, I believe that if I have a good trait or two, I'm sure that one of them is that I'm pretty good at keeping that guy alive. It helps to have a silly job like mine or something, where you can do that and still, keep the joy alive. My job allows me to do that. But I think I'm good at that. Losing the spirit of what I initially loved so much to do, the music, the kind of person I've always been who's just, I'm for fun first in almost all situations. um, so, and the fun slash joy, I think, I've been good at finding uh, the joyful thing that moves me in almost all situations in life. So, and I've held on to, I like to think I've held on to that. So you know, that's a skill that I'm glad I
it.
held on to.
It's an important skill. So when did you,
Did I lose you
how?
there?
No, yeah, we had a little
Hello?
bit of a glitch. I'm here. I'm here.
There.
I'm here. There's a little bit of a glitch.
I thought I just talked you to submission with my long answer.
No, 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 no. It's there's some kind of lag time going on. So when you were younger, when did you
Okay.
decide that you were going to pick up a guitar?
Well, I never did. I know everybody. So many people ask me that, and you'd have to have seen the band, or be
Right.
a close observer. But last guy who doesn't play guitar in the genre. I mean, I write the songs, and I'm the guy up front singing and dancing like the front monkey guy. but I write the songs mostly on piano.
Okay,
I'm
so
not a
there's
piano
why.
player.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not a piano player really, and I don't take it out on stage. But I've rare occasions I've done, and I play it on a lot of the recordings, and that's generally how I write these days. In the last, for most of my writing, but I just knew I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be in a band, and my mom was a great singer, and I had an inkling that I could sing. And so for some reason, I never got that interest in picking up the guitar because at an early age, I was able to like get down to my friend's basement who had a band and stand up in front of them and get the most attention, you know. So I didn't have any real impetus to go like learn stuff and take steps. I thought backwards to have to go and learn a skill, and I loved singing so much right away. And it's still a little odd that I don't. People ask me that all the time. Where's your guitar? Pull out your guitar. But I'm an anomaly.
Well, no, I mean, the thing is, yes, it's either guitar or piano because usually as a songwriter, you have to have one of the two. Not saying you're proficient at it, but you have
Yeah,
to have something to get your melodies going. Even though you can think of them in your head, sometimes you want that lyric or the musicality of it.
yeah,
That's why I
very much.
asked.
Yeah, and sometimes and it works both ways for me. I used to have to, have a writing partner or something when I was very young, and a guitar player, and I'd go to him with a melody in my head and sing it, and I had the chords in my head, and I'd explain it. I had all these strange signs and language, like it was, and then I just started, like I said, doing it more on the piano, where either I'd hear the melody and the changes in my head and go find it on the piano, and then after doing it for a long time, I was able to. Yeah, it's hard to say which came first, but the other approach is that I'll uh, just be playing the piano and thinking of a feeling and noodling around, and then it'll come that way. So it's either comes in my head and I find it, use the piano to get it out, or just play the piano until something speaks to me, and do it like that. But yeah, you got to have something, and I've developed enough of a language. I keep doing this because I'm sitting here by the piano. I got my phone propped up here, but I've got enough of a language as a player of the piano that I can at least do what I need to do for my purposes to write and explain it, then to other musicians. So that's kind of my weird little process.
I was reading online, you were talking in an article, you were talking about how many vans you had been through and in your quest to tour, when you're touring. And I was very amused by the story that you told about the van breaking down and you getting stuck with the
But
tow truck driver.
yeah, do you know? I mean, did you read that story? That
Yes, I did.
I'll tell you. I'll tell it again. Uh, I think I think in that article that I remember saying it was Alabama, but in my mind, after I read the article, I think it was Georgia, but that's not important. But we were coming from a bunch of shows, and I think we were heading home. We had a long ride in front of us, and this big van and a trailer, and breaks down on the side of the road, which it seemed like back then happened on every run of shows at some point, either to a small or large degree. And here we are on the side of this Georgia highway, and we've pulled up the lawn chairs now and and the cooler, and we're just that's it for the day. We're sitting there hoping to find somebody to help us. And the guy comes along with like a big flatbed, and he gets us up in there. We all get loaded into his truck in the cab, six of us, seven of us, and him. And I guess he'd heard that there was a band that was in distress, and so we were like sitting ducks. So he pulls out his guitar and starts playing like Bob Seger songs, like every Seger song, every Skinner song, and we had to play along. One of my guys had to get his acoustic out from the trailer, and and he wouldn't take us anywhere. He played like five or six songs, and he had a big old case of, I remember that it was Busch Light beer, and so now that's it for us. We spent, I don't know, 3 hours on the side of the road with this guy till he would take us. He's like, no, man, because this is gonna be fun. What a great opportunity. we just played, we just played all these shows and wanted to get home. So when we get back to the mechanic, he's closed for the night now because we spent all that time doing that. So we got to get to the hotel in town, and we're kind of nowhere. Still, we get there and we crash. And the next morning, the guy's coming to take us to the mechanic, and he shows up again like 9 a.m. He's got that guitar in his hand and another case of Bush, and he's ready to go again. And he's handing out joints, and same deal. Like he just held everybody hostage until we had played like enough songs that he showed us some of his. By the second day, he was showing us his own material. He was really feeling comfortable with the group. And as I said in that article, we just realized there's nothing we can do. We were at his mercy, and we may spend our lives with this man. it was a 2 day, real 2 day extravaganza. So there's always something happens because being out there, at the level that I've toured at, and we've done a lot of great shows and things that I considered exciting and big and bigger things than I ever even hoped. But a lot of what we do is grassroots and trailers and vans and playing and moving hard and a lot of long drives. And there's a lot of variables. So it seems like there's always something unexpected is going to happen, and that's sort of part of the high adventure of it all.
But that's what makes life interesting. And I mean, the thing is, most people think, well, you're touring, so you must have a bus, and you must have.
Yeah.
No, most people that tour don't have all the.
Most people don't. And, I don't, I still have that hope. And a lot of my friends do who started out in, the same kind of vans like me. And they're big old buses. And, so if they weren't my friends, I'd hate them. But they're all, yeah, these are great people who worked really hard. But that makes it a lot easier. And those guys will tell you when they were in a van. And like me, then you start. It's not just a van. You start with a bad van, and then you get a better van, and that's kind of how that goes. And then you finally get a trailer. We didn't have a trailer the first couple of years, so they're increments. And then when you get to the bus, everybody tells me it's just life becomes a very different situation. Still hard, but there's less variables, and it's just more like actually human life.
Mhm.
But we're out there just when we do just going, and like I said, it's fun. But you got to have the right bunch of guys. And I've always been a stickler about. I made some mistakes, but over the years, the last 20 years, I've had really good, funny, smart, talented guys who I call friends, and that makes living in close quarters a lot easier and usually a lot of fun.
Well, and that's the other thing people don't really think about is a band is not just friends, it's family. They become your family because you are living with each other constantly. And so while they're still friends, there's still that family interaction because you're living together and you
Yeah,
have to know how to navigate each other.
yeah, and I've had I've been really lucky because there's a lot of guys over this 20 or so years since it's a long story, but I lived in New York and played in that scene for a long time, and then Los Angeles, a couple different stints. And I came back about 20 years ago and just had the same thing. I had like a total musical reset because I just run out of ideas, and a couple things that were super promising had just taken a left turn, which is part of what happens with this stuff. But my point being, since then, I've been so lucky to have. I mean, like so many guys. If I wrote down the list of every guy who's been in my band, it's so many. But kind of been a core of a few people. Like it's a 6-piece band, and there's probably like 10 guys that have been in it almost all the time, which is really incredible and lucky. Lucky for me. So, and they've been, yeah, and we're getting back to that. But I mean, when we were doing it a lot, like up till before the pandemic, we were busy and getting more so. And of course, these people. Like it's not just being on stage with them. I've seen guys opening their mail like back when in the van, and or like a bill they or just their house got foreclosed on. I don't know,
Yeah.
or take a tough phone call. How many times have I seen that? Or from a girlfriend back home. So these people, uh, and that's kind of a part of the fun of it, and it makes being on stage better. When you have that empathy for a group of folks, it makes it easier to really open yourself up and find, like I said, the sort of the joyful moments in the thing because you're all there on the sort of on the side of good, trying to make
Hmm.
something good. So it is very much like that. And I'll tell you that in my particular situation, when you
We got you talking about the
yeah,
family and
well,
things.
I was going to say that then an even stranger thing in my case is that when I moved back from LA and had this restart that I talked about, uh, there were two of my brothers were in the band, and one is still Mark Douglas Berardo. He's sort of a singer songwriter guy, and he does very well and has a big career. But he still plays with me a lot when he can. And so for a while, like I said, for a year or two, there was three of us, and still me and my brother Mark. So it's beyond that. Even it's it's actual family, and that can be tougher. I mean, that can be tougher because families don't even have the polite muscle that you have with
Hmm.
with non-families. So because there's so much on the line and it's a heightened experience, and if you both care about it, it can get very, there's ups and downs to that, and we had a lot of rough spots, but it was always, to me, and I think he'd say the same, it's never close to not being worth it because of the advantages of it. But I had a real sort of different and extreme family band situation like that. So
That sounds rough, and I mean, I understand exactly what you're talking about because you don't have the boundaries with family that you do with the
yeah,
cordialness. You don't have you've grown up
yeah,
with this person, so they're going to be in your face if you screw this up.
yeah. There's no boundaries, and
Mhm.
I'm older enough than Mark that like we didn't really have when we were kids. Like I was in high school when he was probably graduating high school when he was 10 or something. So like he didn't, and then I was off to college and then to LA and New York for bands and stuff. So it was on one hand, it was like getting to know each other. But on the other hand, I think, there was a lot of common things. And there was that sense also of, well, we're still going to be family. So we go, almost like say anything we want because you're still going to have to go to mom and dad's on Thanksgiving.
So you
So,
still have to be slightly cordial there.
So yeah, well, we've learned over the years to do it, and it was always more fun than it was tragic. But it could get rough, and we were, like I said, when you're touring, kind of rough, and we're guys. I guess people don't. It's not cool to say this anymore, but I don't care at all. I mean, we were we acted up, like we were beer drinkers and late night, fools and crazier than hell, and we and so and when you're out there in a heightened situation and those you throw in those elements and everybody, you're up on a tight wire, the air's thin, and you can, it could cause trouble and craziness, and and with the whole band. I mean, I've taken guys to the bus station when we had enough of them, once or twice, and you know, Mark or my brother, or someone else has, stormed out of the van, or threatened to get me to the airport. And we've had all of those moments, but honestly, I feel like if you don't care, then you wouldn't have those things. You wouldn't, if you just were there for the ride. I don't care. I just, if you didn't care and you're just the kind of guy that wanted, yeah, I have a force field that ruins technology, so it could be me. But I was just saying that if you had a guy who you never had an argument with, maybe they don't care that much. So that's it doesn't bother me when that happens. The drummer I mentioned, our drummer Paulie, for all those years, Paulie Triff, we were crazy for each other. I mean, like he was like a best friend, and I remember everybody pulling us apart backstage in Cleveland, Ohio, one time and when we got on the phone later, I think we were mad at each other for like 3 days, and we finally all got home and got on the phone, and both of us said the same thing. It's like I just he was arguing in that moment about like for the band, and I think it was something about the house sound or someone else that disrespected us, and I was telling him like, no, be cool, because we're arguing the same thing because we both cared about it. We were
Mhm.
both angry in our way about something that mattered to us, and when things matter to you, you're gonna get your ass up in a bundle sometimes. so,
But
so that's all right with me. I just, yeah,
but the key thing is to not do it on stage, like what
yeah,
happened with Perry Farrell and Dave Navarro. You don't want to do it
yeah.
on
That was
stage.
no. See, that made me cringe because exactly, you should don't. That's nobody else. First off, it's not even that it's unprofessional or people paid their money. I guess that's all true. I just think it's like that's nobody's business. Like if you're in the band, and we would have things that were terrible. I mean, when Mark and I first played, like in bars, just the two of us, and like bars. And I think people used to come, so, and we were drinking a lot of tequila back then, quite frankly, and it would make us unbalanced and unreasonable. And people would,
Oh,
I think that was, people would come, I think sometimes for that to watch us argue, you know. But when it came to something like when there was really a band or playing our own songs and things we cared about, like that always was like, keep that in the van, keep that at the hotel room, keep that. That's for, you know, we can have an argument, but it's not other people's business. Because even as mad as you are at those guys or at each other or one of the guys, you're still like them more than everybody else. Is sort of the theory. You know, it's like,
hmm.
you know, that's, you've chosen to be together. So, and that's like a family thing, and that's like a sports thing or like a band thing. Is that as mad as I could be, you know, that's our business. So that's why I thought those guys you mentioned. I just thought you should keep that at home, fellas.
Well, and I mean, here's and the differences too. Now with technology being around, the world sees everything. It's not
Yeah,
like, in the 80s, the 70s, part of the 90s, it would have been, fans would have shared the gossip along the tree there,
yeah, right.
but it would
Yeah,
not be
yeah.
here. Look at the world can see your mishap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, and as you say that, like I was saying back in those bars, like just me and Mark, I'm glad, lucky us, that people didn't really have that technology, and that's true. Every little mistake or because so many things are nothing. Like I keep using the word, but when you're playing music, it's a heightened experience, and a thing that seems like nothing later could at the moment seem so big, and it might, like, I don't know those two men, but it might have been out of caring about, you know, something that isn't going right, and that makes them mad, as opposed to guys like, I don't give a shit, I don't care, I can't
Yeah.
hear the singer, but who cares, you know. I'm like, it might have been something that, you know, it's to argue out of caring is worthwhile, but like you said, when people see it, then they have their own interpretations, and so, you know, a band like that, you can't have 25,000 people come over the house the next day and explain it to them,
No.
right?
No, and I mean, I've been up on stage and playing bass, and yeah, I screwed up a note in the arpeggio. It
Oh,
was in the same arpeggio. Nobody else knew, but man, did I take myself to task. Even my bandmates didn't know, but I
right,
knew. And I mean,
right.
that's the whole. So when you're talking about the heightened experience, I get it. I've been in a bar where I knew the bass player and I was talking to him about a song. He's like, "Well, I don't know that bass line." He's like, "Show me." So here he gives me this Kabiki Factor in the middle of a bar and says, "Play it for me." And I'm like, "Okay." Sure. But so I get
Yeah, play.
there's this whole drug of being on stage and being that performer, and even without the alcohol and everything, there's still that energizing feeling.
Oh, oh yeah, that's most of it, believe me. And we keep most of the uh, bad behavior till after these days, or but, and we're not that bad, um, but yes, the buzz that matters, and the thing you're there for is the playing the music, and it's a small gig, big gig, man. Like one thing, most of me and my guys, I know, brother Mark, who I keep mentioning, feels that way. Uh, like we don't have another gear. I mean, it could be a bar with two people, me and him playing alone, or it could be, you know, 5,000 people, which we've done many times, like with other acts, with the Doobie Brothers or um, somebody like that. And we don't have a different gear to apply to different situations. It always matters just the same. And I mean that. That's not just a thing to say. Like, if it doesn't sound right, we get just as mad or disappointed or upset in a tiny bar, or, you know, or a club or these huge places, because it shouldn't be qualified. Music's music, and it matters every time. It matters every single time. And that can, like you said, that can make the experience, everything is just exaggerated. You know, the good as well. You know, the mistake like you made, like you know, that time on the bass that
Yeah.
nobody noticed but you. And but also, I bet later in the next song, you probably had some moment of joy or just hitting the mark, and it probably felt like the greatest thing that ever happened, right? Like, so,
Unfortunately, we had one song and that was it
well,
during this thing because it was a talent show.
that's not fair.
And then we went then my boyfriend at the time was also in the band with me, and he was a liquor store manager, and he met somebody at a bar that was one of his distributors, and so the distributor started buying us drinks, and I got quite drunk. Yeah, I admit that because I was so
See,
hard on
see,
myself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But
hmm
you're right. Nobody else probably saw it. And one thing I have learned is a big crowd or small crowd, if you're having fun, and maybe you're having a bad moment, but if overall, come on, you're having fun because you chose to do this thing, and if you can just locate that, and when people see you having fun, they figure, okay, that's why, like, that's what I came for. He knows what he's doing. He's presumably some kind of professional. He seems to think this is great, so it's probably great, and
hmm
and then they don't worry about it. People don't want to worry. They don't want to worry for you. They don't want to hassle for you. They just want it to be great. And if you're having fun, they're having fun, and it's not fooling them. It's just remembering where the spots of the joy are and letting them in on it. That's the trick, and then everybody's happy, and it can be done.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because there was a bass player in a pretty famous band who he was playing a big show and something happened and the sound was off. And so he walked off stage. He walked off stage. He came back with another bass. Same thing
That's
happened.
the worst.
And he was getting booed. And this is a big name band. He gets booed
Oh,
and he walks off stage as they pick up the guitarist and the singer pick up and sing a song. He comes back. They finish the show. And the funny thing is the internet has now forgotten that moment. The internet talks about this show and that is not mentioned at all. And it's like, really? At that time, you were ready to lynch this man for screwing up.
right. Yeah. Did he?
But now, oh, nothing
Yeah, but
happened. It was
like
a
he
great
didn't screw
show.
up. I'm sure. I guarantee you, he wasn't interested in his bass shutting down. Like he was more mortified than anybody there, or more pissed off, than
hmm
anybody there. He didn't want that or do it. And it's not like he's not a pro and he forgot his bass or he plugged it in wrong. That's not what happened. So
No.
people should first off, I think people should give the guy on stage the break because he's there. Uh, he's going to take it on the chin if something goes wrong, not the guy in row 10.
No.
So,
And the roadie's not
but
going to get
I
it.
think you're right about
Yeah.
no one remembers those things.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no one
but
remembers that if you
in
as
that
long as you're fun.
but in that moment we get so fixated on, oh God, I screwed up, or oh man, he screwed up if we're in the
Yeah,
band with
yeah,
them. And it's like none of that matters. Ultimately, people forget that stuff. They go back to what you were saying,
right.
that moment of joy.
Yeah. And sometimes mistakes are things that are, if you don't try to hide them, and I've had obviously plenty of experience at mistakes. And if you don't try to hide them, I think it's human and it brings people into the experience. Like what I do isn't something where there's big production in terms of dancers and light cues and set changes. Like that's not what I do. So uh, when people see the reality of something that you're is handmade and that you're just actually doing in front of them, and there's no tricks or no one behind the curtain, uh, I think it makes you feel like it's a special moment. I feel like that when I go to see something I like. I'll feel like, oh, okay, like they're doing it. It's when a band's really good. Sometimes you forget, like they're doing it. They had to tune those guitars, and they had to do this exactly like that, and it's different every night, and every you breathe different every night, and the temperature is different in the room, and the lights are different, and your guitar's different, and the drum skins are different, and your voice is different, and there's a human element that I don't think people mind seeing as long as you don't go all to pieces.
hmm So when I want to talk about one of the songs on the record called "Take a Little Love," you talk about dreams and memories, and it kind of, to me, when I was listening to it, reminded me of what you were saying about the reset, but it was very reflective. So like you've been contemplating a little bit where you've come from, even more, even you said that about "Take Me Back," but even that, the "Take a Little Love" song sounded to me also as very reflective.
Yeah, that's actually the other one I was. That's very perceptive of you, and but that's the song I was talking about when we were talking about "Taking Me Back," and I said there's another one on there that is the one that really, yeah, it had me just thinking about, hey, don't miss the good moments. Don't miss. I know I keep using the word joy, but it's applicable. don't get caught up. Just appreciate, again, cliches, but just appreciate now. Be in the moment. Be like alive right there, because there's no guarantees. Like we talked about earlier, that it could be health, it could be just a change of circumstances, but don't cheat yourself. Because I know guys in this business who are always waiting for the payoff. The big, making it, or the money, or I don't know what it is. But if you are waiting on that and not enjoying the process of doing it every day, you're a fool. You've taken because that's really what you end up with, and then what you can count on. And that song's about that, about just remember that the only thing we can change or affect is this moment now. This is the moment right now. And don't spin your wheels about a lot of dumb stuff, hoping for your payoff, or the ultimate ending. It's the doing. It's just, the song says the joys in the doing, and the doing's never through. And that's, if you look at it that way, then you can't lose. And you have to love the process of what you do. Like I said, if you don't love making music, don't get in it for the rewards, because that is the reward, and that makes it really a beautiful thing to get to do with your life every day.
I had that conversation with my stepdaughter when I was no longer her stepmom at this point. She was 16. I hadn't seen her in like 6 years, 7 years. And she proceeds to tell me how her dad had gotten her a bass for Christmas. And I'm like, do you know I used to play bass? She goes, I didn't remember that. I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, I'm going to be a bass player and I'm going to be in a band. I'm like, and why you want to do that? Because I want to be famous and I want to do this. And I said, the only thing I'm going to tell you is if you want to be a bass player, do it because you love the music. Otherwise, you're doing it for the
Yeah.
wrong reasons.
Yeah, I hope you did, because that is, I swear, I think that's generational, because I know it sounds like an old guy to say, like, oh, everything was better before, but I think the advent, like you said, about technology and the internet, and just so much noise and so much coming at us, hundreds of channels. And I think that kids now are at a disadvantage, and they don't know it, because of just what you said, because the idea of being famous is stupid. It's not fun. There's no reward in it day to day. And when you get it, who cares? I mean, if there are people who care about somebody like who is on some dumb game show, or reality show, because they're famous, then I don't. They should be put in an asylum, because who could possibly care about that? Fame for its own sake is nothing, right? So
Right.
if and also don't make it music too, because, well, I mean, it seeps into making music, because now there's a generation of technologists that don't put the time in. I believe there's the old man in the yard talking, but they don't learn this from the bottom up, and they don't have the joy of that. And there's everyone sounds the same, and if you're famous, it's only for a minute, and if you get a billion streams, you'll it doesn't, the currency is totally devalued. It won't mean anything. You might not even get a record deal if you had a billion streams. I've seen it many times, and you might not be famous in any way in 4 months. So it's the absolute, that's me preaching, but it's the wrong way to go about it, and I hope you straighten her out on
Oh, I did.
that.
She ended up not doing it, but I mean, it's the two cliches of famous fleeting and Andy Warhol's statement of everybody will be famous for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, and the thing is, I had a friend whose daughter, she ended up, her best friend got like 2 million hits on TikTok. And the next day she had like 500. And she was depressed after that. And it's like, you
Yeah.
can't sit there and, a
Yeah.
teacher, I was listening to a teacher this morning and she's talking about how the children today are constantly, she's like, when I teach in class, I feel like I'm talking to the void because the kids today are so hooked on the social media and the
Right.
phone, they get a quick dopamine hit over and over and over again. They don't know how to be bored. And creativity comes from boredom, I believe, because you have to be creative to keep yourself occupied.
I get that.
So,
Yeah,
not
to
not to
keep your mind
yeah.
moving and growing, and get those stimulants going, the endorphins. um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think so. I feel bad about where music's at like that, and some of it, half of it is like we talked about. I feel bad that I don't get to hear as much great stuff as I'd like to, and the other half is I look at some young artists and I feel bad for them because I don't see joy. I just see a laptop and an outfit, and but that is none of my business. And
No.
and that's a generalization because there's great people all the time. But I think that's a trap to avoid if I was talking to a kid and who would be asking my advice. I have no idea, but
But I think if we, I guess my biggest issue is like I wish people would be more creative. I wish that, I sit down sometimes with people and they're like, I'm not creative. It's like you can, why are you not creative? Can you
been
doodle?
there.
Can you,
Yeah,
we block ourselves from our creativity. And I know I get distracted by my phone. I mean,
sure.
if I'm watching something on TV at home, I'll pick up my phone. And why?
Oh, yeah.
Because we've programmed ourselves to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
every time out of a basketball game or commercial, I'll grab the dumb phone. I mean, not always. I try not to, but I mostly do. But if you're trying to find out what is creative about yourself and find your path there, I think technology can do a lot to get in the way of that. Because you got to be a real open receptor at that point, right? To figure out what your scene is, what your calling, what your the muse is trying to talk to you. So don't have headphones on.
There's one thing we're gonna segue to a little bit of a funny story because the other thing I noticed was your lifeguard job. You were so overly qualified for that.
But so not. I yeah, yeah. Well, I'd come home. The stories that I'd gone one year to the University of Miami, and and I came home and with a really good tan back to the New York area, and I went down to the public pool and I applied for a lifeguard job because I don't want to get a job of any kind, and I just different time. I applied. I filled out all the forms. I had some zinc on my back then, on my nose. I just I had the vibe going, and the man who was in charge of the thing said at the very end of the process, he just said, "You have a senior life saving certificate, right?" And I remember exactly what I said. I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "All right, all right." So I got the job, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it's a real lesson in just looking like you know what you're doing, and just keep moving and keep looking the part. And then, in fact, a friend of mine who I knew from high school was the head guy at a fancy country club up the road there in Larchmont, New York. And he came down to the pool one day and offered to pay me like 3 times as much to come over to their place. So I got hired away for more money. And I never took the test. I did take the life saving test in Yonkers, New York, at this horrible indoor pool, and I failed it miserably. I'm not a really strong swimmer, but again, he hired me away to this fancy place. There was talking of me being assistant head guard the next summer. So it's a lesson in attitude and just just acting like you know what you're doing. That'll take you a long way in show business too. So, but
Yeah, my acting coach once told me when you're filling out your resume and you're applying for a part, if you can horseback ride, you put it on
oh
there
yeah,
that you can horseback ride, then you get some lessons if
sure.
you get the part.
Everybody I knew that I came up like with a lot of people in modeling and acting in like New York in the early '80s, and everybody I knew, I'd look at their card, and I'd be like, "What? Like you've never like that? You've never been on a skydiving, really? Like macrame? Like this is who is this person?" I'm like, don't worry, I'll." So I'd like to see roller skate right now. Well, don't worry. If I get the gig, I'll roller skate. And that's a lot of it. If I learn it as you go. When I first started auditioning for bands and stuff all over New York and later Los Angeles, same thing. I'd go to anything and just, I don't know what I was doing. I was playing football in high school like 6 months before, and then I was in Los Angeles going to these auditions with these like rock guys and managers and stuff, and I'd weasel my way into the audition and just figure it out as I and just start figuring it out, like what do you think,
But
So
but how intimidating was that for you?
it was, but I've been pretty good at that. Like I know I have self-confidence. I also have, like we all do, like sometimes a crippling knowledge that I don't know what I'm doing. But
Imposter syndrome.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, surely. Um, but it was like learning a skill in itself, and it was really valuable, and it was scary. And I don't like it at the time, but I'm sure about what I'm saying when I say that overall in life, like I like stuff that scares you. I like the adrenaline going. I like to take a left or right turn down a dark hallway and see what happens. I'm built for that. I don't love it at the time, but I know I like getting it done. I think I like to face stuff instead of worrying about it. And I wanted to do that. And with show busy kind of stuff, you got to want it. That's what I was saying about the work is what matters, and that better be enough for you, because you have to want those things more than the fear. Like I wanted so much to do that, to be a part of it, and I know I didn't know how, so I wanted to figure out how, and fast, because I hated not knowing, and I hated not doing the thing I wanted to do, like the monkeys on TV or something. I wanted, how do I get in that? So I would the excitement would overwhelm the fear of that, and that still works for me. That still works. I mean, anybody who goes on a stage in front of thousands of people, and I don't always do that, but especially when we're the openers, which we are a lot over the years. Um, and that can be scarier because they didn't come to see you, and they don't
Right.
have all of your hits in their head. Um, but anyone who isn't nervous about that, is an idiot. Like, yeah, like I'd worry about a person like that. People always say that. Are you nervous? Like, yeah, absolutely. I'm nervous at a bar gig a little bit too. Even though I'm really confident and I know what I can do, but you have to. Adrenaline is a great thing, and it focuses you up, and it means you care. If you're and that was like me with these auditions back then. I learned to do it, and then I felt like I had a skill, and now I can do that. And then you got to find the right situation for you. But I got almost everything I went to eventually, and even in New York too, because I was eclectic, the music I liked and could do, and I wasn't afraid of any situation. And uh, I think it's yeah, just if you got to be desperate for the thing you love more than the fear.
Yeah, because fear can trap you. It can paralyze you, but you have to move past it. And I think that's the one thing you have to admit about social media is that back in the past, you may not have been willing to put yourself out there so much. The
Right.
younger generation now, they'll put themselves out there without a question. They don't even care. They'll just put themselves out there because
Yeah,
that's
but
how they
is it really them? I feel there's so much hiding behind that. I mean, I know you're right, because some people would never have the interactions, and that's true. I worry sometimes. I see kids and I think like, you're not. That isn't you. That's best. Best foot forward should be a human skill, not a magic trick.
right, right. No, and I
But
mean that's the thing. Is it really them? Is it a persona that they've created? Because they've idolized certain people, and so now they're putting on this persona, and that's the interesting thing that what is real on the internet?
yeah, I think it's few and far between. I assume everything isn't, until I see otherwise. I mean, mainstream things, people I admire in music and other parts of the arts, I usually trust them because they come with a resume, so like, if not literally, but also literally, but just they've made a deal with the people they make their art for, that you could trust them. I know they're good. I know what they've done. I've seen it. But when you can get so much exposure so fast, why do I trust you? I don't. I'm not. If you never played gigs, and now you have 3 billion downloads, I'm not going to go see you. Like, I don't trust a thing about you. How do I know what I'm going to see? um, because it's so easy to disguise, and that's why those, I think, things like that don't last. But there are still great people who get 3 billion downloads, and they have a point of view that people need, and they keep expanding on it, and then it's even more, and then people begin to trust that this is something real. That's like there's work and heart behind it, and then what a wonderful way to have gotten yourself on the map. So I just think it shouldn't be a crutch But if you really got the goods, then that's a nice highway to get up on.
Well, and that's what they're talking more, that the influence of social media is going away, that people are looking for the more authentic. And so I think if we can get back to maybe the guitar player, maybe the piano player,
Oh,
one thing, and I was talking to my friend about Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga, when I first saw her, I was just like, oh, all she is this. She's got all these gimmicks. It's like Madonna. She had all these gimmicks. And then she played Saturday Night Live where she sat down at the piano. It was
yeah,
just her and the piano.
yeah.
And that I was just like, okay, she does have
Then you
talent.
trusted her.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I thought the same thing when she started, and then I came to realize that, and I'm a freak for singers, like singers, not
mhm,
just the one that sound nice on a hit record, but I mean, I just like the art of it so much.
right.
And she can sing.
Hmm.
There's no standard by which she is not a really good singer, like
Hmm.
a and
Hmm.
she wasn't always, she opened for us. It wasn't at the bitter end many years ago. There was like five people on the bill, and she was the girl in like the 8 o'clock slot, and she was asking us questions about how to start a band, and we had a little record deal. And how'd you get your record deal? And like just hanging around, and she played. And I'm just being honest, it's not insulting because look who she is now. She didn't turn anybody's head at all. Like we didn't even notice her. It just seemed like another sort of annoying downtown New York thing. She seemed nice enough, but like I said, I can look at her now. She's put the work in. That talent was obviously in there, but she had a care and work to become what that is because she's monstrously talented
Hmm.
as a singer.
Hmm.
It,
It's just
it's in
so sometimes that gimmick has to,
maybe
because
that jump started it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because and I watched her recent performance on Saturday Night Live, and she's very much she's still got her persona when she's dancing and everything, but she's pretty much who she is. She's like, I'm an
yeah.
actress now.
I mean, yeah, but she's great at that. Like,
Hmm.
well, she made a movie that really turned me around because it was, about the genre that I'm in, about like Americana rock music world and songwriting. When that remake of A Star Is Born, and so to that allowed me to really put it in a context that I could certainly see and understand, like a prism that would make complete sense to me. And if she was fraudulent, I could have picked that out there. But I remember sitting in that theater back then and thinking, oh, so I sang, wrong again, Chris, because she's really good,
Yeah.
and she could adapt to that style, and I thought her acting was really believable. So yeah, that can absolutely work. But I guarantee she put her time because she's not 20. With all due respect to her, she looks great, and she's got a great vibe, and so it's not that, but I just was there to see that she put the time in. She didn't become that first.
No.
She got there by and you got to learn how to sing and how to play a guitar and all of that. You can do it, but you got to put in hours if you want to really be good at it. If you want to just be good ish or good, that's fun. But if you want to really get in there with the people who are the best, like anything else in life, you gotta, there's no exception to putting the time in and going through all the different scenarios and things you never thought would happen and the disappointments, and learning as an artist to defend yourself, in any situation that comes up emotionally or physically on stage. You have to, we were talking about being scared before you play sometimes, but the only thing that saves you is like knowing you've got it in your holster, like you've got the goods, like what you might not be the greatest, maybe they won't love you, but like what you can do. It's all there in the tool belt, because if not, then that's frightening. That to me would be really scary. You're standing out there and like, I've got an idea what I do, I'm a pretty good, so like that would be scary. But so the more you find command in what you're doing, I think that levels off the fear, and then you can really let loose and be who you are.
So are you still touring?
Yeah, we have. It's been, we were a lot, and then and now it's just been some. We finally got this record out, and we're about to rev it back up again. And we've been doing like three things here, five things there, and one-offs. We're playing in New York City on April 3rd, kind of kicking off the album with the at the Cafe Wa, which is like the famous old place in Greenwich Village. I've never played there. I've been there. Um, we're doing that show with Jonathan Magnus, who is a Grammy-nominated blues phenomenon. She's amazing. And then we're going to play a couple shows with our friend Dwayne Betts. We used to play a lot with his opening for his dad's band, Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers, and Dwayne was in the band, and he's a great guy and an incredible artist on his own. Now we're playing 3 days with him later in April, and and then we're going to try to step back into really revving it up and doing as much as possible. So the business has changed, and there's less opportunities for bands like me. I mean, I'm not whining, but things like tribute bands, like the theaters we used to be in, or the good opportunities, are all tribute bands. Um, so we're kind of fighting against all that and trying to get our traction back. But we will, and and there's all different kinds of opportunities I love all of it. So yes, is my long answer to your question. We're gonna get back at it. Yes.
Is there anything that we really haven't talked about that you wanted to add?
I don't think. I hope you're feeling good because
Oh
we
yeah,
touched on that early on, and I do. I would just like to say that I was super lucky, and I know everybody isn't. And the thing I went through um, is very small compared to what a lot of people go through. But you know that nothing feels small to you at the moment, right? It's
mm,
and if the luck of, in my case, of having it found was stopped it from being not a small thing, because I was, had it not been found right then by the good people who found it, I would have been in a very, very different situation, and I wouldn't be saying this. But so lucky me again. But that I feel great, and I hope you do, and I hope we always have friends. I have a friend right now going through a thing, and we're always gonna know people. So I just think anytime you can pass along that there's light at the end of what seems like a dark tunnel when you find out a disappointing thing, then that makes me feel like doing something all right in the world. So, and I'm sure you do that too.
exactly. I mean, y- it wasn't. I still don't know that I'm completely clear. I'll find that out this week. But
Oh,
I mean, the whole thing is, I feel pretty good, and everybody's like, "You should be resting more." I'm like, I feel pretty good,
I
you
feel all
know?
right.
Yeah.
I
So
noticed. I felt great. It's a funny thing. Right? I was like, I know that's not everything isn't like that, but my situation was I feel fine. Why do I got to get involved in all of this nonsense? I'm fine, but it was the right thing and it paid off. But I'll be thinking of you for sure
well,
and
thank you.
send you the good vibes.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and hope we'll do it again.
I like the fact that Chris was able to tell us a little bit about, the dynamics of being in a band and the dynamics of having a sibling in a band. Because yeah, that changes everything. While you have that close connection with your bandmates, even if some people change out, some people will be core into your band, and you're gonna have to learn how to negotiate and navigate that. But when you have family, there are those other levels. Like you said, you still have to go to family functions and you have to deal with that. So you really can't, you really have to finesse everything then, because there are no boundaries and you say the wrong thing, and sometimes families fracture, as we all know and we've talked about on this show many a times. But things things fracture and things change, and you have to really look at those and be prepared to see how much things will shift. And I think being on the road, like the story of being on the road, everybody thinks, oh, touring's glamorous. But as like the Bell Rays, when we talk to them, how they're footing the bill to, while they love touring, they still have to foot the bill. And Chris, it's not as lucrative as it used to be because things have changed. The pandemic changed a lot in the music industry, and we've talked about that before. And I think now we have musicians that are still trying to find their place. What used to be golden is not so golden anymore. So they're trying to find a place to keep going and keep moving. But the good thing is that Chris has not lost his drive for music. And while we talked about the things that kind of stopped him from doing things, the death of the drummer, the cancer scare, they also helped him create more. And I think that's one of the bigger things what I was kind of alluding to when we were talking is the fact that having that scare, no matter what kind of scare it is, because it can be a heart scare, it can be any kind of scare, something that forces you to look at your, adulting or your own mortality, you sit there for a moment and go, Okay, well, now what? And what do I want to do? And how do I make every moment count? Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to make every moment count, but it makes you pause and reflect and really think about life and how you want to continue with it and how you want to make the most of it. And I think some of those songs, Take a Little Love and Take Me Back, are those songs that are reflective, and you should give them a listen. They are available on Spotify and among other places, and the record's also for sale. And the show notes will be in, the link to buy the record will be in the show notes. But I think really you have to take a moment if you can. Take a moment for yourself. Put the phone down, turn me off, put the phone down, and really look at where you want to go. What does your life look like in the next 5 years? And I know right now there's a lot of stuff that is leading us to uncertainty. But we have to have hope. We have to have faith, and we have to find a little joy in each day. So, on that note, I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, whenever you listen to this. And I'd like to thank Rich Zai from Third Ear Audio for doing the audio productions, Fast Susie for the intro and outro music. And most importantly, you guys for tuning in. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye.